This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, wonderful. This is Sarah, and I would love to get you more of what you want. And my guest, Stephanie Heath, is here to help you get more of what you want, whether it's asking for more money in negotiations or salary, or just all the little things we have to negotiate in life. It is crucial to be able to negotiate and advocate for yourself, even if it feels uncomfortable right now. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm so good. I have my tea. I'm very happy at the moment.
So my husband loves tea and he's a fabulous negotiator. And then my daughter loves tea. I wonder if I'm always obsessed with like biology and connections and how certain personality types lean to certain types of things. So I'm gonna keep a tab on that. Are you your other people who like negotiating, are they more comfortable with tea?
um, I think nowadays everyone's kind of going towards the more healthier route. So we're all kind of
Huh?
like letting go of coffee, green tea, black tea.
That's
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I told Stephanie as we were recording this, it may look like I'm drinking coffee, but it's actually ground mushrooms and all these like brain boosting things. So I love that. So what we didn't mean to, but going into talking about like our personal health, let's talk about the aspect of a healthy negotiation and how that's a part of a healthy life of getting what you want.
I think you and I both know that women are just soft-spoken people, maybe folks that are dealing with imposter syndrome or, are building up their self-esteem, throughout life, we're kind of saying no to our desires just in little ways. And so negotiation is the same. Typically, when folks start to negotiate, they will listen to what the company's saying or their current company or a company they're entertaining, and they'll put their desires over their own. And we tend to think of it as us being a team player or just, taking one for the team or just whatever. We don't want to make people mad. But that's not how you should operate when it comes to your compensation and just in general your life. And there are folks that don't have that, maybe like I said, the low self-esteem or the imposter syndrome or some of the other things. And so they go through life potentially having a better just I don't know, environment, bank account, etc. So I really love the work that I do because I get to be that advocate, that person on the side to help them. And even with me, I have folks that kind of help me as well. So yeah, really obsessed with that.
Every good coach has a coach. So I'm not surprised that you do that as well. Okay, so let's talk about, because I will be honest about my past. Okay, so I had a dad who was a pastor, a mom who was a nurse. I started out in education, right? So definitely none of these were talking about negotiating. You were like doing it for the good of the world. It wasn't about the money. And when I started doing business coaching and stuff, this man, he said, the best way to help poor people is not to be one. And I went, that is exactly right. And my whole life, I've kind of made it like glorified not worrying about money or not talking about money and some of those things. That's how I was taught, pastor's daughter, nurse. It wasn't about the money, and then I started thinking, wow, yesterday I ran into somebody. I knew she was a young mom. She was not maybe a teen mom, but maybe she was 20. Well, I bought a $6 ice cream, but I left a big old tip for her. And when you have money and you can do those things, there's so much good you can do if you're not afraid of it.
Yeah, I love that. Viscerally in my body, like I feel myself kind of tearing up a little bit. It's so frustrating because it's like this lie that we're fed. I was raised really Christian, so I went to church maybe 3 days out of the week. And I just don't understand. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think that we can't help others and be the servant that we want to be or the change maker that we want to be if we don't have money, if we're not comfortable, we're not worrying about certain things. You can only give from abundance. And so it really bothers me that even just when I talk about money on social media, I will want to say something like, I love money and, money supports me. Or I want to talk about, the month that we, created here at SoulWork. And I kind of feel myself pushing back and it doesn't look good. And like, good girls don't talk that way. And, ill, that's disgusting. You're so, low. You're a low quality person if you admit to loving money. But like, I swear, how in the world are we supposed to, for example, donate to the Ukraine or donate to Palestine or, help Detroit out with their dirty water that's been happening for almost a decade if we are poor? I just really don't understand it. And I get that as a society, women, oh, sorry. Sorry about that. The minute I touch my headphones,
Oh, that's okay.
music
They'll edit
starts
it
to
out.
play.
It's no problem.
Okay. I was just saying that it just I don't know, like I feel like crying right now. Like it not because I'm like, it bothers me to my core because I don't understand how are we supposed to do good. And I also really hate the fact that we villainize people that are doing so much in the world, right? We could both drop names of folks that are in the media that are billionaires, and people are always wagging their finger at them and saying, you're not doing enough and blah, blah, blah. And, we could talk about this for a long time. I have opinions on this, but what we do here at SoulWork, we have a team. It is just me right now. I'm the main coach, and I really try to focus on managing my energy and my aura so that I can continue to show up and be that grounding force for my clients, because I really want all of us to make so much money. And that is honestly all I care about. I care about that these people are working with folks that they enjoy and they can be their full selves with them. So finding their people at these companies, but on top of that is just being completely 100% fully supported by money. And so that's just, I know I'm going on a tangent, but that's something that I'm really aware of in my business right now. It's just, Stephanie, how are you managing your energy so that you can continue to do this? Because it's just not fair and it's not right. And we need to love money so that we can make more, so that we can be these people that are helping hundreds and thousands of millions of people versus like just walking down the street and giving someone $1.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, even I remember last year I had an employee who she was working part-time for me and working part-time for another job, and her other job fell through. And I was like, oh, okay, well, how much were you making at the other job? You can just work more for me. And I remember like how proud I was of myself. And it wasn't about me having a new car or whatever else. It was money supporting me so I could support others. And that feels really good, whether it be supporting your kids, for many of our listeners, supporting themselves after a toxic relationship or being single, or it's easier, money's choices, right?
Yeah, and I love that you're sharing that personal story about yourself. The more you share about yourself, the more like, oh, tell me more. Like I like kind of learning about your background.
I heard any of these stories from her. Hopefully she's never talking about money.
No, but I think it comes from childhood, just like society and childhood. And there are folks that are walking on this earth that, don't feel the same way, and potentially they have a better quality of life. So yeah, I thought of something else, but the thought has sailed on. And yeah.
So let's talk about if you are that good girl, which sounds like we both grew up, and I have a lot of good girl listeners. How do you start to get comfortable with money? Because I know it was something I had to work very hard at. One of the biggest, I just had such this block of like, I'm a good person if I'm poor, and if I'm not poor, then I'm evil or bad, or my priorities are wrong, or something I've personally had to do a lot of work in. So how do you help women overcome that?
So we talk about it, right? So we have, so my signature program is called the Six Figure Catalyst. It's a group program for folks that are making under 6 figures. And then I have another program called the Career Catalyst. It's typically for women executives that are already at the 6-figure mark and they're trying to up level in some way. And so what I do is I just really push them. So my background has been a recruiter. I've hired for every investment bank you can think of, Amazon, Sony. I've been head of recruitment. I've been a sourcer. So I kind of know what goes behind the scenes of negotiating a salary. And so I say all of that to say that when we talk about money, I try to push them to a number that seems outrageous and they feel uncomfortable with. But me as a recruiter, I know that it's fine because we did the research. We're looking at what can this company pay, what's the mid, medium, and high of that function, and we just ask for the most. So for example, if a Meta or Amazon can pay 175,000 on the base or 225 on the base, but like a Xerox or a mid-tier company can only pay maybe 145 or 150, we're asking for the 220 or we're asking for the 225, just so that when they negotiate down, they're landing someplace good, or we push out that company's top line dollar. Like we force them to show their hand. And so they're fine with it. They trust me. They're all like me, like us, like good girl, soft-spoken, not really pushy people. So it feels uncomfortable in their body, and maybe they'll ask me a ton of questions, but because they know I've been a recruiter, they trust me, and we kind of go with that language. And then we typically land at the top of the budget that company can offer. So it works out.
My husband's always talking negotiations, and he's worked for huge companies and negotiated out contracts with Microsoft and, just these huge companies. And so he's just like, loves it. He loves it, right? He's like, why would you take the first deal ever? And I'm like, because then you can move on and have lunch. Like, I don't know, what do you mean? He just loves the process of negotiation. So what do you know about? I loved the insight you said about things you knew about salary negotiations that most people wouldn't. What else do you know about negotiations that the average person doesn't know?
The average person assumes that a negotiation starts when you receive the offer or after the final round when the company gives you a verbal offer. That is absolutely not where it starts. It starts on the first interview or the first moment they bring up compensation. So for most companies, a recruiter's job is to sell you on the company, suss out if you're a good candidate for the role, and try to get a good dollar amount for your services. So typically on the first call, they're asking, what are your salary requirements at this time? And that's where you need to either go first. You can say the first number. You don't have to, like, whatever personality you have is fine, but engage in that conversation. Maybe say, oh, I'm new to the market, I'm not quite sure, or hit them with the highest number possible. And then from there, you indicate with your tone, and especially for folks that are a little bit more soft-spoken, you could pretend innocence or just being surprised, like, oh, I was actually looking for something closer to this, et cetera, et cetera. So just managing that conversation with your tone. And that is just setting the tone of what you're looking for. So after that call, as long as you are not after you talk to the recruiter and you guys say, okay, well, let's discuss this a little bit more later down the line, they at least now know what you're looking for. And they know that, okay, of all the candidates that we're considering for this position, this person is going to be at the top of the range. And that's totally fine. And I think sometimes women or just folks that don't advocate for themselves, they don't realize this. And then later down the line, what happens is that the recruiter has that information, and they'll let the hiring manager know, or they'll let their VP of HR know, and they can kind of do what they need to do on the back end to get more budget or get close to that number for you. And so then when they have the second conversation, typically there'll be about 3 conversations generally for the average person. If you're making, 6 figures or 220, or you're maybe 7 years and more of experience, that can be 6 to 8 conversations. But for the average person, you'll have the second conversation where they'll say again, is this still what you're looking for? I was able to go back to my manager. We can do a little bit more, but unfortunately we can't come that high. And that's when you can engage in that conversation to get them even higher until you reach their cap. And then the final conversation is that's not when you negotiate anymore. When they say, okay, this is the final offer, if you're still negotiating at that point, that's when you can kind of come across as greedy or just annoying, to be honest with you, from like an HR recruitment perspective, because you should be setting the tone and letting them know early on what you're looking for and kind of going back and forth so that that recruiter can just do their job and ask for what they need to ask for and then present that to you and you accept, or maybe you'll have other requests. Can I have a sign-on bonus to make up the difference? And for me, with my clients, we just negotiate cash and equity. We don't play games with like, okay, give me an extra week of vacation. Like, that's not going to help you and your family go to Disneyland or to go to like the 5-star resort versus a 3-star. So we really just focus on bonus, equity, and salary. And so most people don't know that. They think it's just like at the end.
Well, so what I hear you say is you research, figure out what you want, and then practice almost like the brand or personality of what you want. Like as I heard you say, like even if you want to feign like, oh, I thought it might be a little more than that or something, it doesn't have to be, what? I can't believe I'm never working for that. Or it doesn't have to be that forceful. type of behavior, right? But I heard you researching, what's the going rate, right? And then one of the things I always tell my ladies is to practice saying numbers out loud. Not the first time you go to an interview, not the first time you have that meeting with your boss, way ahead of time. Practice, I'm looking for a 20% difference or whatever it may be, 120,000 a year. Like, practice saying that out loud so you don't come across as nervous when you're saying it there. Is that something you advise?
I think that's great. I think that would be healthy. I will say though that even if your voice shakes and
Mm.
the energy comes out that you're still uncomfortable with that number, it doesn't matter. I find that people, personally speaking, I find that people are more helpful than not. Yes, depending on where you are in the world, if you're on an H-1B visa, you don't have a green card, maybe you're from a demographic that sometimes people have bias against, or you're, speaking to a recruiting agency that's representing you at a client, that's when sometimes you find like those hardcore sharks that really just want to get you at the lowest that they can. But for the most part, outside of that, most people, if you seem nervous about that number, they just want to make you happy. So you can be nervous, you can like your voice can shake. That's not gonna ruin anything. That's why with our clients here, you can have whatever personality type you want. If you want to be the innocent type or the more direct type, we can work with that. And I would just say, to piggyback on what you heard, definitely yes, it's the research is the first point. And just don't even figure out what you want. Just figure out what the top of the range is. That is what you want. You always want to be paid the most you can. And then just manage the conversation. You can put a bit of an actress hat on, but just maybe just think about who you are as a person. Are you more direct or not? And if you're not, then just be that non-direct person. Let them say the first number. And you can always have it, switch the conversation to email as well. If that would make you a little bit happier, or just, not mess with your nervous system as much.
Is there a tip you have? Because I'm in my head right now as a coach. I'm listening like what my ladies would say, and they'd say, "Oh, but how do you get past the block of here's the top of the range?" Like, I hear a lot of like resistance from, "Oh, but the top of the range, that's for like really great people, and I'm just pretty good," which is probably that imposter syndrome and all that stuff you were talking about. Do you have any strategies to help people get past that? Or do you just say, just do it, girl, just do it?
No, absolutely. So the two strategies we employ are, number one, deciding to embody being a high value candidate. So as a recruiter, when you're interviewing different candidates for a role, some folks aren't really sure of their worth. Maybe the role seems intimidating to them, or they have maybe 60% of the qualifications, 40% they don't have. So, they're trying to prove their worth on the call. They're rushing to answer things, they're rambling. They aren't secure in their worth. That's why we tell folks to kind of go through the job description with a fine-tooth comb and be able to have an example for each. And if you don't, share something that's similar, or just say, hey, I don't have this experience, but XYZ. So being able to embody that high quality candidate, maybe having water next to you so that you're not rambling, maybe have a sticky note that says, there's nothing I can do in this moment to block the role that's meant for me, so you don't put so much pressure on each individual interview. And then second to kind of being that high value candidate is, let me see, what is my second strategy? So being a high value candidate, and then, okay, so employing the in one ear and out the other ear technique, which is just, the company will say something like, this is the top of the range for us right now. Since COVID, we've had to let go of folks, and this is just our budget. Asking a clarifying question. So saying something like, okay, how did the team come to that number? I'd love to just kind of understand that a bit more, or any other innocent question to get them talking again. And then all you would do is sort of just repeat your ask. So they may say, oh yeah, my manager, and last year we have more budget, but if you sign now, in 3 months we're going to revisit this. We have performance bonuses, and so you should just really sign now, and later on we can revisit this. And that's when you would just take a deep breath and, repeat your ask, say, at this time I'm looking for XYZ. And you can also just kind of pretend to be apologetic about it, where it's like, I'm sorry, I know this is above your budget, but this is what I'm looking for. And what tends to work with our clients and just with folks, I find, is blaming it on the market or on the other interviews or companies you're interviewing with versus these are my
Okay.
desires, etc. So you would say something like, currently I'm interviewing with companies that are offering around this, or I'm being represented at this amount. So they know that it's not really you, it's just the other companies, and they kind of have to just get competitive to get you.
Advice I give with women dating, it's exactly that, it's the high value, right? So, asking for what you want again and making sure everybody knows you're not the only person I'm interviewing with. Like, cool. If you can't come up with that number, that's cool. Cause I got 5 other people who are waiting to take me on a date or, whatever it is. It's really, I know a lot of my listeners, we can, whatever we feel uncomfortable with, whether it's money or dating or whatever, we put it in this whole really scary category, right? But it's the same strategies. It's just kind of life strategies, right? Of, hey, I'm high value. I know my worth. I have lots of people who would love this type of worth, and so I'm just going to keep asking for what I need or for what I'm worth. So I love that example, in that it's so translatable to all kinds of areas in our life, whether we're fundraising or parenting or advocating or dating or negotiating.
Yeah, and to reiterate, you don't have to be your 100% best self every time. Be the best that you can, say what you need to say with that quivering voice, and just blame it on your other interviews, and it typically works. I've had really shy software developers get obscenely large offer packages with like telling me with like a nervous voice that this is what they're looking for, and I just had to go back to my hiring manager to get more. But I love that sort of dating kind of juxtaposition because it's so true. And
Mhm.
again, you don't have to be perfect to do either.
Absolutely, yeah. But we definitely want to, within the positioning ourselves as high value, what you're talking about is doing the choosing, not just begging to be chosen.
100%. And that's tough. That's why it does help to work with someone, whether it be like a mentor of yours or whomever that can continue to reiterate that. With our clients, we meet every week for 1 hour for 10 weeks. So with every conversation, I'm reiterating their value. I'm telling them that most candidates, don't have 100% of the qualifications. You don't have to be perfect, and just kind of injecting them with that sort of self-esteem as they go along in the process.
I love it. Stephanie, tell people where they can find more out about you and your work at SoulWork and Six Figures.
Yeah, so you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. Just look up Stephanie Heath. The company page is there as well. So we're in Six Figures. I do hang out on Instagram a lot. So if you want to connect with me there, you would just type in career coach Steph, one word, and the company is there as well. So work in Six Figures.
I love it. So if we got to broadcast you to the entire world for 1 minute and you got to answer a question somewhat relevant to what we talked about today, what would you broadcast to the world?
So just a statement.
Yeah. No right or wrong answers.
Okay, it would be that you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be high energy or high vibrational every day, 24/7 to get a soul aligned position, to get an amazing partner, to do better in your business, to hit 10K, 15K, 50K months. You can show up in your humanity and just be yourself and have those highs and lows and still have the world support you. That's something that's been on my mind lately. So
I love it. Thank you, Stephanie, for helping us on our journey to becoming toxic person proof.